person.
Get in line.
Mistress of the Winter Constellations? Oh, I didn't realize! Please don't flay me!
Oh, he's just kidding. I would never flay.
Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here, bringing you another review of a Star Trek Lower Decks episode. This time I'm talking about Something Borrowed, Something Green, Lower Decks visit to the planet Orion, homeworld of Devon Tendi. As always, there are spoilers ahead. You have been warned. So with this episode, we once again return to the mysterious attacker who has been attacking vessels. We started with a Klingon ship and a Romulan ship. In this episode, an Orion vessel is targeted and seemingly destroyed, with all aboard appearing to be lost. And again, kind of advancing this strange aggressor who has been targeting these vessels. And clearly, obviously, the big bad of the season. I'm assuming this is going to come to a head at the end of the season. Still not sure what this is all about yet. There's some interesting parallels between each of the ships getting attacked. As Brandy pointed out in our live show about these episodes, it seems that each time that one of these ships is attacked, we see lower deckers aboard that ship kind of plotting to take over the vessel, or at least kind of expressing displeasure with the command of the ship and maybe wanting to do things their own way. Interesting little synchronicity between all of these. Could that be what this is about? I don't know, but it is a very interesting commonality. From there, of course, we go to the Cerritos and the main plot of this episode, which involves Tendi visiting the Orion homeworld for the wedding of her sister, D'Erica, and Mariner and T'Lyn tagging along. Mariner to, support her friend, and T'Lyn supposedly to make this report to the Vulcan High Command about Orion, a planet very much shrouded in mystery. Tendi seems somewhat embarrassed and not really wanting them to come along, but at the same time agrees that it would be nice to have her friends along for the trip. There's so much to love about this episode. I think each episode this season has gotten better and better, at least as far as the A plots are concerned. We'll get to the B plot of this episode. I have some thoughts on that as well, but it is so much fun to see the Orion culture shown here in this episode, even in that over-the-top kind of animated Lower Decks style, but at the same time giving us a somewhat plausible and interesting culture with the Orions. It seems like we get bits and pieces of it over the course of Star Trek history, beginning with, of course, the Cage and Vina, and the very kind of unfortunate, very misogynistic appearance of the culture, what little we get of it, with that kind of being turned on its ear in Enterprise, where we learn that it is the women who are in charge. However, even that portrayal in Enterprise always struck me as a little bit weird and problematic with, oh my gosh, how strange, the women are in charge. Wow, this is wild and crazy. Kind of giving it that I don't know, just a little something that didn't quite sit right. But I really think that the portrayal of the culture here in this episode kind of squares that circle and makes it make a little bit more sense, and kind of brings that all together. Seeing that culture actually operate really helps me to understand these people a little bit better, and the culture that Tendi comes from. Of course, the revelation that Tendi was raised as an Orion Syndicate assassin comes as a surprise to absolutely nobody. That includes the audience as well as Mariner and T'Lyn. They know who Tendi is. They've seen these parts of her that she's tried to hide over the years, and she has been afraid to show what she calls her true self. And Mariner comes back with a wonderful retort to that, where she says, the real you is the one who geeks out about science and is so passionate about being in Starfleet. It's really a wonderful message that we don't need to forget where we come from in order to be the people that we want to be. So Tendi has been embarrassed about this past of hers and where she comes from, but it's really nothing to be embarrassed about. And as we learn in this episode, sometimes those skills that she gained as an Orion Prime, as she's called, really come in handy a lot of times, and they have in previous episodes as well. So it's fun to see Tendi kind of confront that, and literally confront that in her sister, D'Erica, who's had to take her place as Prime. I love this family dynamic here. I totally buy D'Erica as Tendi's sister. Their relationship makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's wonderfully brought brought to life here on the screen. And of course, as always, there's so many hilarious bits in this episode. The episode gets deep and serious, but at the same time, never forgets that it's comedic at its heart. I shouldn't laugh at this, but Mariner getting stabbed repeatedly in the shoulder, 3 times that we see, and apparently at least one more time off screen as they talk about her getting stabbed during the daddy-daughter dagger dance when they're looking over the pictures at the end of the trip. Yeah, I think this episode was wonderful. I give it 1 New Seattle hump dungeon. Really, really great episode. Again, like I said, each of these have gotten better as the series has progressed. Which I should say now brings me to the B plot of the episode, with Boimler and Rutherford kind of getting into these arguments with regards to their shared quarters. I enjoy it. I like these characters. I think it's fun. But at the same time, this B plot felt more sitcom-y than anything else. Not a lot of depth to the story. There's kind of wacky situations. I think the situations between Rutherford and Boimler make sense for their characters and are funny enough, but once it escalates to the point of Captain Freeman and the Chalnoth captain getting together on the holodeck dressing as twain to come to an understanding, at that point, it's kind of lost the plot a little bit. I think that was a little bit too far. It doesn't make any sense. It kind of breaks my brain a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot of logic problems in this whole part of the episode. I mean, why were Boimler and Rutherford called to the bridge in the first place? To just stand off to the side while the captain argues with this Chalnoth so that they can put forward their Mark Twain solution. And the captain goes along with it. I'm not buying it. It's funny. I laughed. The Chalnoth eats the bonsai tree, ha ha ha, but I'm not really getting into it as much. Certainly not as much as the A plot, which I think is absolutely stellar. Also, the queen of this hump dungeon that we see on Orion, Ingrita, that's just Ursula, right? Like, this is totally an homage to the Little Mermaid's Ursula, right? I mean, yeah, but I love Ursula. She's a great villain, terrific homage. I'm there for it. I also want to highlight T'Lyn in this episode. She really shines. She is truly becoming Tendy's friend, and that is wonderful to see that relationship evolve. It's funny, we're only 4 episodes in to season 4, and T'Lyn's only been in 3 of them, and yet I feel like she has just really become an indelible part of this cast, and I really love seeing her here. She has some great one-liners as usual. Her calling the one Orion man aesthetically pleasing was quite amusing, of course. And her pointing out that they met a priest with an 8-pack when they're going over the trip pictures again. I feel like her superiors in the Vulcan High Command would likely raise a brow at that and probably comment that once again she has lost all control. But T'Lyn's being her best self here, and I think Tendi is rubbing off on her in all the right ways, and T'Lyn is introducing a really fun element into this group. So A+ for that. More T'Lyn, please. And I think we're going to get that in next week's episode, judging by the title, Empathological Fallacies. I feel like they've thrown logical in there for a reason. So Easter eggs in this episode. The episode starts with this Orion vessel, which is a really fun cross between the Orion Marauders from the Enterprise episode Borderland, and also combining elements of the Orion ship from the animated series, the episode The Pirates of Orion, or Orion, if some of the dialogue in that episode is to be believed. We also have the plunder that the Orions are going through. We have a classic TOS phaser, the kind seen in the original series, a rusty Klingon bat'leth, more modern Type 2 Starfleet phasers, a Vulcan harp, and a Vulcan lurpa. The Mark Twain hologram is, of course, reminiscent of the time Mark Twain was actually on Star Trek The Next Generation, played by Jerry Hardin in the 2-part episode Time's Arrow. We have more Orion ships. These ones look more like the Orion barge seen in the episode Bound. Speaking of Bound, Mariner references that episode, saying that Starfleet made the pheromones up that Orion women exude in order to explain how a Starfleet captain could be bested by the Orions in that episode. Of course, we know the pheromones are in fact real. It's just that Tendi isn't one of the Orion women who have the pheromones, And as we learn, she's never needed them to control men on Orion. As mentioned earlier, we have a Chalnoth captain. This species first appeared in the TNG episode Allegiance. And interestingly, the Chalnoth ship is actually from a Star Trek The Next Generation comic. Thanks to Jorg Hillebrand on Twitter for a bunch of these. There's a bunch of Easter eggs here that I got from him. Thank you so much, Jorg, for all of your hard work. If you haven't followed him yet on Twitter, he always has amazing Easter eggs, not just from recent episodes, but going back through TNG and a lot of other series as well. But apparently, this Chalnoth ship is from the cover of a 1994 Star Trek The Next Generation DC comic. So the creatives behind this show really digging deep into the past for some of these Easter eggs, not even canon sources, but really combing the huge amounts of Star Trek material out there for really cool Easter eggs and visual references for this show. Wonderful. So I also learned this from Jorg Hillebrand's Twitter. The Orion script in this episode, anytime you see Orion lettering, apparently it's a 1-to-1 transliteration to English letters, which gives us some really fun bits that we can translate in this episode. So, for example, we have the sedan chair that they're getting carried around on. Apparently, in the Orion language, it says on them, "This is a very fancy chair." Very true. And the other really fun one is the wedding invitation that we see at the beginning of the episode. We see that apparently it has some filler text in it. You can see that on the screen here, along with even the name of Daerica's husband-to-be. Fiancé Orion is what he's labeled as there. So yeah, just some placeholder text, not the final version apparently. At the end of the episode, we of course recognize the Starfleet ship that they hijack to get to the wedding on time. This is a Raven-type vessel, similar to the starship piloted by Annika Hansen's parents, 7 of 9, in Star Trek Voyager, as they set out to the Delta Quadrant to look for the Borg. This would seem to be the same class of ship. It can't actually be the Raven. That ship was very thoroughly destroyed. But yeah, this ship is of a similar type, and they even recreated the bridge in stunning detail from what we see of that ship's bridge in the episodes The Raven and Dark Frontier. So that's just kind of a smattering of the Easter eggs that were in this episode. There are plenty more, as there are in many other episodes of Lower Decks, that I just can't quite get to because there's just so many of them. Seriously, go check out Jorg Hillebrand's Twitter. You can find him at GachYogi49. I'll have a link to that in the description below as well. And thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. We've got 6 more episodes of Lower Decks to go, so I hope you'll join me for those as well. Thank you so very much to the Patreon supporters for your help in bringing these episodes to you. I could not do it without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To everyone else, once again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode, Empathological Fallacies. Until then, as always, live long and prosper.